career, only knocked out once, was his final match, actually. Well, no, that's partially true. Unofficially, someone had laid him out cold. So listen to this. He was on a tour and went to theaters, and he was actually boxing on stage. I'll fight any man. If I fail, I'll pay you. It's like $15 or something, and which was a lot of money back then. But and most of the time, he'd hit them once, they would not get back up. Until Donahue stepped in. He helped, actually, he was at the school to run the boxing school. Lasted 2 rounds. But then Sullivan gave him a blow on the face. Refused to go down. He was enraged, and it changed into like a rocket fuel, and he launched an attack, and he connected with his jaw, Sullivan's jaw. The strong boy, Boston strong boy, went down. Sullivan, not a boxer, not supposed to be able to level a champ. But there's a surprising detail. Donahue was actually a woman. A woman. Miss Hesse Donahue. And she died in 1961, but she went on the show I've Got a Secret, and it's all documented. So that's actually that's a statue of him that she's looking at there. But she knocked out this man. Wow. I'm thinking about the story, and I thought, what was the buildup behind that blow in that woman? A little study, found out she'd married four times, had to care for all those men. She was hit by a car and had to hobble around in life. She had buried her 8 children, all of them, and had no money. In fact, she was just tired of getting hit by life. And so she got in that ring, and she fought for the $15. She knocked him out. One punch, pow, put him out. The buildup behind that blow. So I want to preach a sermon. This is not a marriage sermon, but kind of. Kind of. And it's a story I've used many times in the Bible, but never in this way. And as I'm reading this particular story in the Bible, I thought about 3 things in the back of my mind as I'm reading this story. I thought about the woman as a wife. And then I thought about, as I'm reading this story, the man as a husband, or just men in general, women and men. And finally I thought about just as a couple. And so I'm just taking this story in with that kind of a mindset. And I really wanted to preach this. But let me give you an understanding of what's going on, and I'm going to do my best not to lose you, all right? Because Kathy lets me know that I can do that often. So, so here's this woman in the Bible that we're about to read about in 2 Kings 4. She notices a man of God, a prophet, just walking by all the time. And so finally she steps out, because she's walking past her house periodically, and she steps out and says, hey, have you eaten? Well, why don't you come in for a sandwich, for a meal? And so, well then, as days down the road, she does that again and again, and he got used to just, well, whenever you want, just stop here, I'll feed you. Please, stop. It's my joy. So then It turns out that's not just the making of a meal, but now she decides that she wants to make a room for him up on top of their house. And, well, it's not her idea, or not her husband's idea, it's her idea. But that's where we pick up just this one verse. I'm going to jump through the chapter with different verses. But the prophet is just so extremely grateful. She feeds me. Now she's giving me a little room up top. And what can be done for her? He asked his servant, his own servant. Well, she has no son. And her husband's old. So no son, and the husband's old. Now, she had to feel, God, no son, and my husband's like beyond that baby making time, and she just felt rejected, no doubt, by God. And in fact, she had hoped and hoped and hoped and hoped it was going to take and take. Never did. Never did. And, well, she lost all hope. And so, but Elijah hears the prophet. She had to have a son. Well, call her. Call her. And so in verse 16 of, okay, I didn't get the verse. Let me read it. 2 Kings 4:16, Elijah says, call her. And so his servant called the woman, and she stood in the doorway. And this is the second time he's talking to her. Before that, he asked her, well, what can I do for you? And she says, I'm good, I'm good. And actually, that was through not a translator, but this. Okay, there's the prophet. He had a servant, and he's talking to the woman standing in the doorway through tell her, what can I do for you? What can he do for you? And then it's all going through him like this, and she's standing right there in the doorway. Well, anyways, so she leaves. I'm fine. She walks away, and finally calls her back. And then we pick up the story. He says, call her. And so she came. She stood in the doorway, and the prophet tells her directly now, about this time next year, you'll hold the son in your arms. No, my lord, she said. She objected. Yeah, no. And let's read it now. I got this part now. So please, man of God, don't mislead your servant. But the woman became pregnant, and the next year, about the same time, she gave birth to a son, like the prophet had told her. Okay, you got it? So the son grew, the child, and one day went out with his father, who was with the reapers, and he said to his father, my head, my head. The father says to his servant, carry the boy to his mom. After the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat in her lap until noon. Then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed, the man of God, that addition she made. And then she shut the door and went out. She called her husband and said, please send me one of your servants and a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return. Well, she reached the man of God at the mountain, and she took hold of his feet. She's in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me, the man of God's saying. He's not told me why. And then the woman blurts out, did I ask you for a son? Didn't I tell you don't raise my hopes? As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you. So she got up. So he got up and followed her. Now, I'm going to have to fill you in with some of the details as we go, because there's so much more that actually happened, but it was just too much to read. So, again, while I'm reading this, I'm thinking about the woman. Now, here's a really good woman and a good wife. And on top of that, she has a concern for the kingdom of God. She's concerned about, doing something. And the man of God that's walking by, and how can I aid him? How can I help him? And she's got this concern, and her heart is into the things of God. And because of that, God blessed her in many ways. Not every way. She didn't have the son. But in all the other ways, God had really blessed her. And the Bible tells us she was well-to-do. She had a house, not a hut. She had a house that she could even build a pond up on top. So that was pretty good standing back in those days. But really, she wanted to just help the kingdom of God and just to make it go. She saw a need, and then she decided to meet that need. Not mention the need, but to meet the need herself. As she urged this prophet walking by, hey, have you eaten? Hey, come on in. And she urged him. No, I want to feed you. No, come in. Let me just take care of this right here, right now. And so she was really concerned about that. And then she wanted to bump up this given ministry. Well, I'm feeding them all the time. And now she's saying, okay, I've been making meals, but how about we make in addition to our house? And she put herself in a place that at any given moment, she had to be at the ready. Any given moment. All you wives know what it's like to know that people are coming over. The dishes have to get washed, vacuum and everything in place, and would you go get your underwear out behind from the door, and so she has to make it ready. She has to keep it ready, but she put herself in that place to be ever at the ready. Any given time, he could pop in. That was inconvenient, really inconvenient. Any given time, whenever he comes, right? So Elijah, he picks up on this, says, you've gone through a lot of trouble in behalf of us. You've really gone out of your way. You've gone through a lot of trouble for us. And so, wow, what a woman. But you know what? Her ministry was just a whole lot more effort than she realized. And even when she mentioned, putting on this additional room, she ends up kind of doing most of the work herself, or at least hiring the work, making sure everything's done right, and she just saw it through. Made sure it was decorated, took the task, but she never really imagined how often that place was going to be utilized. She was willing to bump it up, and it did, her ministry, and now she's really being taxed. Now you have to understand, too, in those days, it was just hard to be a woman compared to today. It was just a lot harder. Like I said, Elijah the prophet had his servant, and Elijah couldn't directly talk to her, even though she's standing right in the doorway. He had to speak to her through his servant, and just the way they did it back then. And it was just hard. So many issues about just being a woman was tough. Being a wife was tough. And then when you read this text, if you have a frame of mind like I was having, her husband was really letting her down in so many different ways. He wasn't pulling his share like she thought that a normal husband would do and should do, and not pulling the share. And so, you kind of pick this up in the story. And so when they do come, and there's a place, I didn't really read it, but there was a bit of a clash. And anyways, it's, she's thinking, you're not doing what you should do. And by golly, I have evidence. And you got too much time out in that field right now. Too much time, way too much time. Well, it was reaping season. If we don't get these grapes off, we're going to be sowing raisins. And, well, and then also, the son, my head, what happened? Why is he saying my head, my head? What happened? And why doesn't he know? And he should know what's going on. He should know what's going on. I put him in your hand. You should know what's going on. But she's bearing this buildup now of just her husband kind of failing her and failing with the responsibilities, and she's under all this stress. And even when their son dies, he's oblivious. Out there in the field, doing his thing. And so she gets a donkey and she goes to the man of God. And when she reaches the man of God, she falls down at his feet. And Elijah, I quote, she's in bitter distress. And I don't know why. God hasn't shown me. I don't know why. Because she falls up and she's just breaking and weeping. She's in bitter distress. Yes, the son dying. But it was all of the things building up to that point where she's now blowing a fuse. And so she lifts her head and I can picture her face in the anger. Did I ask you for a son? Didn't I say, don't raise my hopes? I just picture her face. And then Elijah tells his servant, run with my staff. Go see if you can get this boy healed. And but she's grabbing his feet and saying, I am not leaving without you. There's not any other man that was going to be able to do it. It was just not going to work. Had to be the prophet himself. So I was just thinking about that stuff while I was reading. And then I'm reading and I'm seeing the man. He is who he is. He is who he is. And he was what he was. And, he had very real limitations called age. Very real limitations. And he could not be what she expected him to be. I can't give you a child. I can't. And, and how do I know what's going on? How do I know what's going on? I can't read your mind. And so, sometimes, I picture, husbands, it's like with the wife, they have a rummy cube and say, okay, well, so this is going on, so this needs to go over here and switch and switch this, and it's like they're trying to put the thing together and places where, and it's like we have to solve this problem, this puzzle. And even the man of God said, as he see her just broken, I don't know why. I don't know why. God hasn't told me. Now sometimes, that's the only way we could know. God tell us. But he doesn't tell us. And so, and then the woman, when she did open up her mouth, she came at him sideways. She reached back to a prior discussion. And didn't I tell you? Right? I thought, this is just so couples. In so many ways. Didn't I tell you? Right. And so now he's got his Rubik's Cube and he's putting it together and said, oh, okay, I got it now. But he's putting it, she's not spelling it out. My child's dead. Didn't I tell you? Why you didn't tell me the child's dead? Oh, I need to know. I'll go fix it. Yeah. So, but again, like I said, it's kind of a marriage message. And then I couldn't see them, as I'm reading, I couldn't help but see them as a couple. You know, the woman herself, all the burden she's bearing. And then the man, it's like, honey, it's harvest time. I can't. Not now. Any other time of the year, but right now you want me to drop everything? I can't. And so they both got their issues. How many have hydrogen peroxide at their houses? How many ladies? Guys, you probably don't know. Maybe you do. Hydrogen peroxide, it's great. You can clean clothes with it. You can clean cuts with it. Medically, yeah, you can clean your toothbrush. And after the toothbrush, you can clean the mirror. It does so many things, but what people don't realize is that actually, over a period of time, it can dry, a long period of time, and it can be highly explosive. Google it, for real, yeah. Now, it's rare, but it can be. But it's not so much that it's explosive itself, but what it acts like is it's an accelerator to combust other materials. Okay, let's bring this back down to where it applies to us. I know how to combust Kathy, my wife. And nobody can do this, but Kathy can make me just blow, absolutely blow, and lose it. So, here's a household product that can actually accelerate and combust other materials. And yet that's what's happening many times in marriages. Because we're going through things, but the other, not realizing. She's going through things, but the man, not realizing. And so here, each of them feels like they're getting little help for their issues from their spouse. They each feel like that. They each feel like that. Why don't you come? This is really tough for me. And well, I got things to take care of too. And they both just feel like they're getting little help, and they couldn't understand the other. Each person, listen to me, each person has their very own real issues. They're very real. To them, they're real. They're real issues, and you will never understand the enormity of the chaos that's going on in here, and all that they're facing. It cannot be explained. Because when you explain it, it just seems so trivial. It just doesn't seem like much when you explain it. You can't explain just the load that you're bearing. Each has their own. Both are equally taxed in this arena. Just going through things is too much, drawing too much on them. Both. The man couldn't walk away from that time. He couldn't. Harvest time, and he had to send a servant, just take the boy to his mom. I can't do anything about this anyway. She'll know. But she was so offended at that. He couldn't walk away from his job. And here the boy, and he didn't know the enormity of, John, you got to help me with this. How could you go from a headache to dying by noon? What could happen in a child like that? Well, he didn't know that. Who would have guessed that? And so, he might be thinking, if she'd have been out here just watching him, I'm trying to take a load out, but she'd been out here just watching him, and she just saw him. He hit his head or what happened. I don't know. His head's hurting. I don't know. And so, they both have their issues, and they're being taxed. Understand here, your spouse, your spouse, is as equally taxed under pressure, going through things as you are. Amen. Get that. Because you think your load is harder. It's not. It's equal. And then, of course, we see in this story, there was like little to no communication. Hey, honey, this prophet's walking by here and there, and so now I'm feeding him sandwiches and once in a while lunch. But how about we make a room for him? In addition, he's eating. Yeah, whatever. Go ahead. Keeps going. There doesn't see any communication going on there, and then get this: the servant takes the son back. As his head hurts, back to the mom, and someone said, "What happened? What happened?" I don't know. So let me bring him to you. Well, did you see what happened? What did he say to tell me? And he told me to take the kid here. No information. None. No information. And husbands aren't good at passing on information. So she holds this boy in her lap. Just holding him. It's going to be okay. And he dies in her arms. She places him into the upper room that she made the prophet's room. And all of a sudden she says, you know what? I'm just going to take things into my own hands. He's doing his thing. I'm going to do what I got to do. And just goes out and yells at him and says, give me a servant. I'm going to take the donkey. I'm going to go see the man of God. Today? Why today? There's no festival going on. What are you going over there for? And she goes, it's all right. It's all right. It's very telling. I'm not going to debate with you on this one. This is just going to escalate. And, the boy was left in your care. He's in real pain. Take him to his mother. You never went to even check on him. So she's like, What are you going over the man of God for? And he's just trying to understand the thing. And she's like, I don't even talk to you right now. Not even talk to you. But she respectfully stopped it before the whole thing blew up. There's conflict in marriage. We're getting close to Valentine's Day here. I remember a couple of Valentines ago, I went to buy a card, and I'm looking at these cards, and I'm reading it. That is not me right now. I don't feel like that about her right now. I had a hard time finding a card. But she was so respectful. She stopped it, and she just said, I'm going it alone. Take the donkey, tells the servant, don't slow down for me. And she fell at the prophet's feet and holds onto his ankles. This really is a pretty good picture of marriage, isn't it, at times? But you know what we see here? We see them avoiding an explosive, bad argument. Arguments from a little problem, if you're not careful, it can just so quickly grow into an emotionally just explosive blow up. And I want to talk about rules and boundaries that we just can't cross, okay? Now as it comes to the marriage part, okay? Just things we can't cross. How many saw this last week in college basketball where, one frustrated girl playing pushes one of the other, the opposite team's member, pushes her down, and then, that was girl one, pushes down girl 2, but that teammate's girlfriend comes over and pushes this one, and so it just could have been a brawl. Well, both the girls that pushed were ejected from the game, which, it was a discipline to them, a spanking, and they're not going to be playing some future games too. But mostly they were ejected from the game because they didn't want it to grow into a full-blown, brawl. Because the heat was going, and so that's why you're out of here. You're out of here. Okay, that's not just discipline. It is, but it's don't let them back in the court together. They're going to start punching, throwing blows, right? So there's rules and there's boundaries in basketball, but rules and boundaries that you cannot cross. They cannot be crossed. Let me talk about some of those real quick. How about you have to stay respectful. You must. No name calling, no character attacks, no degrading language and put downs, and they feel bad, so they want to make sure that one feels as bad as them. Stay respectful. Don't change your face. Yeah. Stay respectful. It's a boundary. And of course, just don't be defensive. Don't be defensive. That's a clear signal you just don't care. How about in rules and boundaries and fighting rules? How about you take turns? Listen, because your spouse really needs to be heard. They want to be heard, as you want to be heard. And your job is to try to understand their viewpoint, even if you disagree. But you have to understand why they look at it that way or why they feel that. You have to understand that. And again, you may not agree. But you have to try to, that's your job. And so as you're listening, you can't be thinking about, I have a really great comeback. You just got to wait till they quit talking and I'm going to lay it out and you're anxious to get. No, listen to what they're saying. Try to grasp it. Rather than always just trying to come up with a comeback that'll trump them. And they put you in check, so you got one to put them in check. And then how about just a rule, stay on one topic. Because it goes from boom to here and to there and to there to there. Before you know it, you're back some years ago. Never raise your voice. Now, I'm perfect at this one, so I can say it. Because it always escalates. And it's impossible to resolve the issue from there. And of course, never be violent. Never. In fact, if it gets heated, just agree to take time out. Let's just stop. Let's stop. It's okay. And you can pick it up, continue the discussion later when you're calmer. And you know what you're going to find out as you begin to really listen, you really listen to the others. And even in this story, they're both right. They're both entirely right with the cards they've been dealt, with the issues that they have. They're both entirely right. I don't know what's wrong with the kid, and I don't even know how to explain it. Right? You're the mom. That's why I sent them to you. You got this. And when I hold them, it's not nearly like when you hold them. When you think it through, they're both right. They really are. But they just didn't understand the other's issues in fullness. And you can't. You can't. But what we do see is just how God was just still so involved and was there. Let me read the rest of the story here. So when Elijah, the prophet, reached the house where the boy was dead, There was a boy lying dead on the couch, and he went in, shut the door on the two of them, prayed to the Lord. The boy sneezed 7 times, opened his eyes, and Elisha summoned the Shunammite woman. When she came, he said, take your son. She fell at his feet, bowed to the ground, took her son, and went out. God raised that boy from the dead. God got involved. Yeah. And so this woman not only had a miracle child from a very old man, and about this time next year, the prophet said, you're going to hold a son. That happened. She didn't believe it. It's hard to believe. You know how long we've been married? And yet she got her miracle son, and she got her miracle son back again, raised from the dead. And the man, he got his son. You have to remember, for a man to have a son was just something. Yeah. And so after all these years, and he's old. He must have been ugly as a mug. He didn't get married until he was late. But he had his son. He had his son, and he didn't know that he even died, but still now, he's got his son. And so even just God just knew the thing that they just both needed. And would tie them together. And so, I'm trusting as we walk through that, and I pondered the woman, and I pondered the man, and I pondered the couple, and kind of shared that this morning, and I'm trusting that you're going to ponder these things and maybe apply it to your own relationship with your spouse. And so, let's pray. God, what a joy again to come and to hear your truth.